Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the second of a series of video workshops from the Delaware Museum Association. I'm Casey Greer. I'm the president of the association. Um, and I'm also want to remind you all that we have one more in this series coming up on March 2nd. It would have normally been scheduled for the 23rd of December, but that's Museum Advocacy Day. So we have scheduled for March 2nd, and that workshop, which is also from 12 to 1, will be on social media and publicity, simple publicity strategies for small institutions. So you can get people to see your online programs that you're going to learn about today. So I'm going to turn this program. First of all, I want to thank Dan Citron from the Delaware Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs. He's sort of handling the technical part of this and is letting everybody in and is keeping an eye on things and is also recording this. We will put up this session on, if you know someone who's interested but was unable to attend, we will put on a session, put the session on the Delaware Museum Association website. And so on that note, what I'll do is go ahead and turn over the program to my colleague and my successor at the Museum Studies program at the University of Delaware, Ken Cohen. This is your chance to lay eyeballs on Ken for those of you who have not been able to, since everybody is sort of shut away. So thank you, Ken, for agreeing to host this, and I'm gonna sign off and just become a watcher myself. So thank you, Ken.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks to Casey and Dan for organizing and orchestrating everything. We've got some really experienced and I think helpful speakers to help us talk about running virtual programming. As Casey mentioned, my name is Ken Cohen. I'm the new Director of Museum Studies at the University of Delaware. I'm arriving at Delaware from the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, where I was a curator and secretarial scholar for the last 4 years. And I've worked with a number of institutions on in-person and virtual programming pre-pandemic, and I'm keeping a running tally. So I've done 18 virtual programs with all sorts of institutions since the pandemic started last year. So so have my own sort of set of experience with this and have written about it a little bit on the AAM blog, particularly as relates to security issues. So we can talk about those if they come up. We're also joined by Bridget Warner and Caitlin Dykes, who are respectively the site supervisor and lead interpreter at the Zwannendale Museum for Delaware's Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs. And I'll briefly spotlight them so that you can see them. There's Bridget and Allie. And we're also joined today by Allie Schell, who's the Director of Programs at the Marshall Steam Museum and Friends of Auburn Heights. And she should be right.
Already spotlighted me.
Oh, there we go. Oh, excellent. There she is. So, so anyway, have we decided the order of presentation already? Okay, great. Allie, are you up first?
I'm up first.
Excellent. There you go. Take it away. Thanks so much.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Allie.
Hello. All right. Let me get situated here for just a second. Yeah, so I'm so excited to talk to you about virtual programming. This was my year all of last year, as I'm sure it is for a whole bunch of you. And hopefully you get some new tips and tricks out of what I'm going to talk about. And so mainly I'm going to be focusing on using Zoom for virtual programming. But for me, using Zoom was not enough as is. So my top is going to be how I manipulated Zoom to do what I needed it to do for my programs. And so I come from a small museum background and mindset. So oftentimes when I present about museum topics, I'm thinking about it in terms of having a limited budget, staff, and resources. So if you come from a site that has lots more of these, just take my ideas and add to them. And my email's right here. I love to chat with people and brainstorm or anything you want to talk about in terms of what I'm chatting about today. Feel free to reach out to me. So really quickly, I just wanted to share an overview of the virtual programs we did last year. We don't want to relive 2020, so I'm going to be very brief about it. If there's anything I talk about here that you want to know more about, happy to answer further questions. So luckily, because we're a small site, I'm a staff of 2. We were able to pivot almost immediately from when things shut down in Delaware. And we put up a Storytime online program. Anyone who's familiar with virtual programs in the COVID age, everybody just about did a virtual Storytime program. So soon my program was not as special as any other place, and programs sometimes have a shelf life. So after about a month or so of doing this Storytime program with a craft activity, we moved on to other things. But I found virtual content is never fully wasted. And so we used a lot of the Storytime recordings that we did and integrated them into virtual events. So we did 2 of these last year. I don't want to relive them. I definitely like in-person programs a lot more. But my boss here, she did a whole talk about this for DMA a couple months ago. So if anyone is interested in doing an all-day virtual event, I'm happy to answer all the pros and cons to why you should or should not do it. But we did use some Zoom programming and some other programming in there. And then finally, we landed on our bread and butter programming, which is our virtual programs for schools and libraries that were both live and recorded. This was my awesome intern, Maddie. I believe I see her supervisor on the call now, and we can extol our praises, but she was doing a virtual program for us in costume, which I'll get to in a little bit. So this is mainly what I'm going to be framing a lot of my virtual program advice on are these sort of school and library programs that we did. But a lot of this content that I'm going to be telling you can be integrated into adult programs or other types of programs as well. So yeah, so I started down the path of using Zoom for virtual programming and deciding that I didn't love all the elements of it when I realized when I was going to record and do these programs for kids that I didn't love the share screen option in Zoom. Some of you may have used this option before. When you do a PowerPoint presentation, the speaker is often this big in a little box in a corner. And I didn't like that. For kids, I really wanted to connect with them and have them see me face to face a little bit more. And so I stumbled upon, if you haven't noticed already, Prezi, which is nothing new. A lot of you probably have heard of Prezi and used it before. It's kind of an alternative to PowerPoint. But when I was going down this path of like, what can I do that like makes my presentations look a little better and you can actually see my face? I think it was in some museum Facebook group, someone recommended this. And it's great because it links directly into Zoom. It also links into Microsoft Teams and also Google Meet. So for me, using this with schools was so important. There's lots of other, different things that can integrate into Zoom. I'm sure you can find this one I just really liked, and it worked for me. It's also free, which small museum person, I love free programs. And you can also upload PowerPoint presentations, import anything from Prezi in there, or create your own program. So I never used Prezi before. This is kind of my first go at it, but it does what I needed it to do. So as you can see, it presents kind of nice, clean images on here. You can still see my face, and you can actually record through Prezi, which I had originally done recordings of my virtual programs through Zoom. Again, same thing. I ran into the sort of difficulty of my face being this big and the content being this big. So I can always share with you guys. This is kind of paid content for our site, but if you want to see some of our virtual programs that we created for kids, I'm happy to share that if you shoot me your email. And I just thought that Prezi recording for programs was a lot cleaner. The quality was a lot better than recording off of Zoom. But I still use Zoom for other things to record programs that have multiple people. And I use another special program, which I'll get to at the end, that I cannot speak highly enough about. But not every application and every program is perfect. There are things with Prezi that I don't love. You can't incorporate videos in this portion of the presentation style, and you only have about this much for text. So if you're looking for something a little bit more dynamic in that sense, it's not going to fully do what you need it to do. But if you're looking for a nice, clean way to do a virtual program presentation, especially for kids, this is really great. Okay, So just some of the basics. But one of the big points that I really want to make today is to think about, since I'm sure a good portion of you use Zoom, is how to use all aspects of Zoom creatively. You know, a lot of us just think one-dimensionally that it's just we have to be talking at each other on the screen. Maybe we use the chat function to interact with people. But there's so much more to Zoom. There's the poll function, there's breakout rooms, there's a whiteboard function, which I just found out about the other day. And of course, you can always use chat and on-screen engagement creatively. So don't think of Zoom as one-dimensional. And especially because the majority of my virtual programs mainly consist with working with kids, I knew that our programs need to be a little bit more interactive, and I need to think a little bit more creatively of how I used Zoom to do that. So I'm going to give you guys a few examples to get your creative juices flowing, and hopefully these are some things that you can use to incorporate in virtual programs that you might do at your site. So one of the first things that I landed on to make our programs engaging while using Zoom was incorporating games. Really simple. I know some of the stuff is just basic things, but sometimes we forget to go back to the basics. And this one, we simply incorporated movement games. This is just stop, go, slow down, which is a way that we adapted red light, green light. We use this for a lot of our younger kids, but movement games aren't just for children. Think about using them for adults. You can find lists of all sorts of movement games online. So it's a really great way to do like an icebreaker in the beginning. It doesn't have to fully, go with your talk. It can be something that you just kind of get people excited and engaged with your program. And it's also really just great to keep kids up and moving for kid virtual programs because they're stuck in front of a screen all day. I'm stuck in front of a screen all day. I don't want to just be sitting here. If I had more time, I would make us play a game, but unfortunately I have limited time for this presentation. So maybe next time we can play a game together. So think about movement games when putting together a virtual program. And then I also like virtual games. And so I actually found a website that allows me to create virtual games for free called Genially. You may have heard of this, you might not have. There's lots of different sites where you can create virtual games. I just really liked this one. It kind of had all the bells and whistles that I was looking for to create really dynamic looking games for free. There is an upgrade version, but I honestly found that I didn't need to upgrade to use what I needed it for. And they have lots of different templates to create all types of games that I can easily adapt. And so any of the games that we created, and I'll show you just examples of them, we just used the share screen function on Zoom, and then I had to be the one to facilitate it, which is only interactive so far. So I used some other functions in Zoom to kind of make it a little more interactive. So we basically first just did a trivia type game. We did a program called Locomotive Lingo, where we put up train phrases, and then people had to find what object kind of related to that phrase. So sometimes a steam locomotive is called a tea kettle. You guys can probably figure out why. But I really wanted a trivia type game that I could put like big graphic pictures and it looked really exciting on the screen. But also in Genially, you can share what you create. So sometimes with like if you created this in PowerPoint, for example, it's a little harder to share. This way it's all online. You can easily just pop a link into the chat function when you're playing this game on Zoom. And after your program, your participants can keep playing the game if they really want to keep learning about locomotive lingo, for example. So this was really great to do. And rather than just having kids shout out the answer, which is fine, or give a thumbs up as one of the icons, we use the poll function, which I'm not sure if people have used the poll function before for programs, but this is what it looks like if you haven't experienced it before. So essentially you do have to preload your questions in advance. That's one of the tricky things with using the poll function. You can't just on the spot send out a poll to participants. So I had to preload kind of questions and answers in there before my program. And then it asks participants, they can choose to answer it or not. And then on the back end, you can actually see who answered the question and what the breakdown is. For me, I didn't really care, but if you have a program where that might be something that maybe you want to ask how many people are members or not, that could be some way that you can use it. I've also seen people use the poll function as an icebreaker before a program starts, kind of like a movement activity where they could ask something like, if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be? Or similar questions like that. So Some of these things can become key components as part of your program, but also can just kind of shift and create a different kind of mood and get people really engaged with your program kind of right before it starts. And then we also used Genially to create a choose your own adventure game. This is again through my Rockstar intern this summer, Maddie, who you can see in the top right corner. And choose your own adventure games are really basic, but people, adults and kids really love them. And so in Genially, we were able to create this game, again, something that people can play afterwards. I'll put links to these in the chat when I'm done with my talk. But again, we use the poll and chat function for people to kind of weigh in as to what we should do. And kids really get into this. Sorry, give me a second. They really love, getting to be decision makers. So if there's a way you can incorporate a decision-making game into your virtual program, it will go over well, I'm pretty sure. And then if using a whole type of new virtual gaming platform does not sound appealing to you, you're just like, give me the basics with PowerPoint. I have even used PowerPoint templates to create games. So most recently, I used it to create Jeopardy. I downloaded the template, no need to reinvent the wheel. I don't have time for that sometimes. So, if there's a basic game that you're looking for, there's probably a PowerPoint template for it, and it'll make your life so much easier. And again, for Jeopardy that I've used in other ways, I've split people up into teams, and then they use the private chat function to kind of answer questions and things together. So just some quick examples of easy games that you can do to just take the content further for your program. Instead of just sharing the information, why not make it into a fun game? And then finally on Zoom, don't forget the whiteboard function. So this is really great to play, Pictionary-like games or drawing games. You can even play tic-tac-toe. This is really great. I don't know if people know this, but you can also allow multiple users to have access to it. And so most people can play along versus sometimes when you do a share screen function, I'm the only one that can access that screen. So lots of really great options out there to incorporate gaming into some virtual program components. And then finally, I want you to think about creating an environment on Zoom. And what do I mean by that? So awesome Rockstar Maddie, intern, I know I can't sing her praises enough. She was integral to a lot of my virtual programs this summer. She decided for a virtual program that we were doing, which was based on the first woman to travel across the United States in a car in 1909, that she was going to dress up in costume and pretend to be Alice. This she didn't have to do to do the program, but it really took the program further. And so if dressing up in costume or adding some living history elements really work for your site, consider dressing in costume. You don't even have to take on the persona of the person, and use Zoom background strategically. So you can't see it in this picture, but if she is, supposed to be an early traveler at the turn of the century driving a car, why not take a picture of, a shot of our cars where it looks like when she puts the background up, you're in a car. Think about, using those Zoom backgrounds strategically to create an environment. And don't forget music. Music is a really great mood setter for things. So you can have background music for your program, even if you're not doing a living history type program, just something soft in the background kind of adds dimension to a program, or even background noises. This program could have been taken probably a little bit further if we had looked up maybe 20th century cityscape sounds and kind of added them in softly in the background and those kinds of noises. So kids really get into it. Adults really get into kind of scene setting, mood setting, things like this. So if this is something that works really well for your site, think about incorporating these little tips and tricks into what you do. And I can't stress enough also watching what other places do. It's not cheating, you're getting inspiration and you're gonna adapt it to what your place is. So I would suggest, if you haven't already kind of been watching different virtual programs, I recommend not picking ones directly related to kind of your interpretation or what you do at your museum. Pick ones outside the museum fields. You're going to get some tips and tricks. There's going to be some you're going to get nothing from, but there will definitely be ones you'll get some really neat ideas that you can adapt. And I want to share here and give a shout out to New York Historical Society's Living History at Home program. They are a place I got a lot of great ideas from, and they do a really great job of incorporating living history elements such as, getting dressed up in costume. They are the ones that kind of taught me to use, the chat function and the poll function and a lot of other different things while running a program. And they even did something as simple as, getting audience participation in, let's say, setting a table. So for example, one program I watched, the educator was setting her table for Kwanzaa. And so she asked the students that were watching, the participants that were watching, should I put this bowl of fruit on my table or this vase? Should I do this or this? Should I wear this or that? And it just seems really basic, but even just adding that level of, audience engagement and feeling like they're participating with you in the room really just adds a lot of value and dimension to your program. And so now with a year under my belt doing virtual programs, what am I doing? And so I am continuing our youth programs online with virtual and live and recorded programs. And then we also just launched a new program here, which is, I hate calling it a lecture series. Lecture series just has some negative connotations. So I'm calling it a collections exploration series. This will eventually integrate into an on-site program. But for this, I decided not to use Zoom. I found something called Restream, thanks to a museum friend in the field. So always ask your museum friends for advice as to what they're using. I really liked it because it's clean looking. It looks more professional in a way than Zoom. You can incorporate your logo. You can add some captioning to the bottom. And because I really wanted to use YouTube Live, while Zoom is really great for some things, I still found with some of our audience that it was limiting because they just get confused signing up for it and things like that. That's still happening. So I really wanted to link into YouTube Live because that way it was just a link. They could go there. The link's unlisted because our program does have a little bit of a paywall. So I had a little bit of that challenge to try and navigate. But I found this thing called Restream that allowed me to do that. And let me get a picture of what the back end looks like real quick. So the back end, if you use things like Facebook Live or YouTube Live, this is what you want. You can see on the right side, all of the chats come up if you have people chatting or commenting on your Facebook live video. There's a lot of different ways that you can, if you have multiple speakers, you can put them on or take them off. So I really liked that portion of control. Obviously, I'm control freak when it comes to my programs. And then I also used it to record programs. So how I'm now doing my live programs that are for adults is I actually pre-record them all. And then I edit them, cut them down, I integrate in pictures, which is a lot more work. But honestly, when it comes to the night that I need to air this program, it saves me a lot of headache. In case there's any tech issues, I already have most of it done. And so I just, through Restream, just air it live. And then at the end of it, I have an actual live Q&A with the speaker. So just some ways to think about integrating a new platform. It does cost money. So, if you have a little room in your budget for it. So essentially, I know I ran over my time a little bit, but I found in this brave new virtual world that I needed a few different resources to create the type of quality program that I want. And you might want to too. So be creative, lean on your resources at your site and in the museum community, and try to think outside the Zoom box. So feel free to ask me any questions at here or after the program.
Thank you so much. I think we are going to hold questions until the end. So we can transition now to Bridget and Caitlin. And I will try to make sure that whoever is speaking has the spotlight. Caitlin's sort of laughing at this effort because I've already failed to introduce her the first time. So here's Caitlin, and we'll let you all take it away. Thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah, this may be a bit strange because we're going to both be talking. So as Ali pointed out, some limitations to the Zoom platform. So here we go. We're going to try to do this between the two of us. So hopefully we'll manage to make it work. If
How's
it's
that?
confusing. Oh, that's better. Of course, now we're screen sharing, so gosh only knows. All right, I hope that looks all right and it isn't too confusing between all of us. So I don't know, Bridget, if you want to start and then I'll jump in.
Yeah, I'll start. So in the past, we really didn't do a lot of virtual programming. And of course, like everybody else, you know, COVID hit and it's like, oh my God, we got to start doing something that engages people. You know, Allie had her rock star. Well, I have my rock star, who you just heard from, Caitlin, and a very young staff who's very creative and willing to learn all these and do all these digital things. So we decided that we were going to try a couple of programs on Facebook. Advantages to Facebook, the cost, the budget, you know, it's available to everyone. So we did a program on cross stitch. I guess, yeah, there we go. Stitching on the light. And what I'm going to do is just basically tell you that this was a 5-week program. It started in January. We started it on the 2nd with a description of what the program was going to be about and the materials that people needed. And we were actually going to have people involved in the cross stitch program. Each week we would show a new pattern with a tiny URL, and I have no idea how you even do that. Caitlin's going to talk to the particulars of the program. So I am actually going to turn it over to her, but it was a 5-week program. And Caitlin, I guess I'll let you take it away for the details.
Sure. So in a way, our programming that we're going to highlight here is almost, I don't want to call it directly the opposite of what Allie was talking about earlier, but Allie was really talking about how to have really engaging programming where you're super involved with your audience. And in a way, we're talking about the way you can get that engagement without being that involved with your audience. So it's not the same kind of engagement. It's really the opposite side of the spectrum, but you're still going to be seeing people who are engaging with your site and your resources. So that's really the difference here with this program. So as Bridget said, this was a program that we rolled out over a 5-week period. It was nice also because it gave our volunteers something to do, because we were like, hey, cross stitch all this stuff for us. So we got to rope some of our volunteers in. I'm sure all of you are dealing with issues keeping your volunteers engaged and having stuff to do. So things like this where they could volunteer from their own home was also nice on that front. So with this program, we rolled it out entirely on our Facebook platform. So this is a very, very low bar as far as what you need to make this sort of programming work. If you have a Facebook page, you can do this. We did almost all of our promotion exclusively through Facebook. So we used our Facebook platform reaching out to other groups or other Facebook pages who either are from our area or who have like are similarly a historical site who might be interested in promoting our stuff, with the promise through Facebook message that if they needed any promotion, we'd do the same. So it was very, for lack of a better word, like a grassroots driven programming. So entirely on Facebook. The way it worked is we rolled out a new portion of the pattern every week. So you had to join us on Facebook to participate. That said, we did offer the option that if people did not have a Facebook, they could shoot us an email and they could still have the program. So we're not excluding people, but we're really heavily encouraging people to join us on Facebook. That included encouraging people to tag us on Facebook so that every time somebody tags us, we could reach out to them and say, oh my gosh, can we share your stuff? This is so great. And so it created this feeling, even though it's entirely on Facebook, between all of the different people doing the pattern, that they were stitching along together, each one participating each week and showing up and sharing what they had done. Now, in the middle of this, we decided to add a Zoom presentation. So there was a live function so that they're not entirely doing it in their living room with no connection to us. And we invited the person who made the pattern to come in, do the Zoom presentation. It was set at the 3-week period, so it was halfway through. So if people had questions or they were struggling, they could ask the pattern creator right there. And we stream that on our Facebook as well. So if you signed up for the Zoom, great. But again, this is still, it could be viewed entirely on Facebook alone. So that really, this is like I said, like the opposite end of the spectrum from an engagement standpoint. We just listed a few things about how this can work for you. I've gone over a couple of them, but from a promotion standpoint, this can be done entirely on Facebook. If you don't have a budget for advertising, or you don't have a budget to, or you don't have someone who can do press releases for you, or other ways in order to promote your programming, you can do this entirely on Facebook. Obviously, some of us have more Facebook followers than others. So, and I mean, we have a pretty small following. So it was a lot of reaching out to other pages and other local Facebook groups. Become a part of every local Facebook group connected to your site that you possibly can be. Because all of those can become a resource. You can share these events there. You can reach out to pages with similar motivations and similar subjects as you, and ask them to help you out. So we always reach out to our Chamber of Commerce, to our local people living in Lewis pages, all of those things, to try to get them to share it for us. So the other thing is, if you haven't messed around with Facebook too much with the platform, there is the option to pin posts to the top of your page. So that's just an action that you can perform. You literally can go in, you hit pin post, and it'll stay at the top of your page. So every week, because this was a running program, we would pin the program to the top of our page. So it's the first thing you're going to see when you check out our Facebook. And that's whether you follow us, like us, you searched for it, you have no idea, it's always going to be the first post. And if you do have a bit of an advertising budget, you can boost posts. And those advertisements cost as little as $5. So it can be very inexpensive compared to other advertising avenues. And then the other thing I was saying with hosting, so we did host through Zoom, which allows you to also stream live on Facebook. But you can actually do the entire thing just on Facebook Live if you wanted to. Or if you don't have a Zoom account with a webinar function, or if you don't have the budget to pay for a Zoom account with a webinar function, you don't need it. You can literally just stream live on your Facebook account. And it allows you to, that function will allow people to comment if they have questions, and you can answer them live. So you're still going to have that element of engagement with your public without having to necessarily pay for another platform to use. And then, of course, the other thing with Facebook is it's really flexible with video and photo content. And in fact, Facebook will promote video and photo content above everything else. So it also might help you gain some more followers.
We also encourage people to participate via hashtags and comments. And we did get some people who submitted pictures of their work and to show us how far they got along with the photograph. In fact, at the very end, a woman showed us her framed version with her whole collection on her wall, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. So we got to still interact with our public. It was strange because it was much less direct engagement than we're used to.
So the second social media program that Caitlin and staff came up with was Uniquely Lewis, which was a photo contest. It was a 3-week in July where viewers submitted photographs the first week. The voting took place the second, and the winners were awarded the third week. And one of the biggest awards was the fact that their first place pictures, second and third, were featured on Facebook, which gave us more posting opportunity, but it also gave them, an opportunity to show their work. And Caitlin can tell us a little more about that as well.
Yeah, so there's no reason why these sorts of programs can't work for your audience and for yourself as well. I know for us, at least, social media has become a full-time job on its own, just keeping up with our social media, trying to promote our social media, trying to stay, for lack of a better term, relevant on social media. And for better or for worse, social media isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to continue to be a part of our lives, I imagine. And so this offered us an opportunity to continue to share their artwork and their interest in keeping people interested. But also, this sort of content does really, really well on social media. I don't know who here has an Instagram account, but if you are also running an Instagram, Instagram is entirely photo based. And the more high quality, more beautiful photos you have, the better that content is going to do. And so something like this, it allows people to participate, of course, and we had a huge response to our photo contest. People loved being able to take pictures of the area and share what they thought was important about the town and what they loved about it. But it also gave us a huge pile of beautiful photographs that we could use in the future for other things, whether that was creating social media content or programming or anything of that nature. So we're offering to boost them by sharing their photos and tagging them if they have accounts and things like that. But they're also boosting us. And in the period of time that we ran this photo contest, which is really only 3 weeks, as Bridget said, we saw a huge increase in the number of followers that we had on our Facebook and Instagram pages. So I think they like increased by half again over the course of this presentation. So that really helped set us up for success in the future. So we ran this program. And then in the future, as we continue to promote other programs on our social media, which may not be Facebook or photo like motivated, those posts do better and our organic reach advertising wise is better because we've collected a larger group of people who follow our content and share our content. So it also helped us in that regard. And again, that's all free. That's free publicity that we didn't really have to do a whole lot of work in order to get. So we're getting all of that extra publicity just because we shared all this stuff on our Facebook and because these particular kinds of content are really popular. So I put just a couple of the benefits here. These are, I've already gone over them pretty much, but again, this is increased social media engagement. So when you do programs like this, you're going to see more people engaging with your page over time. I mean, you'll probably see, as we did, a big jump initially, but those people don't tend to leave right after that. They're going to stick around. And so they're going to keep seeing all of those other things that you're promoting that way. And so although you may have started really struggling to promote the initial program, you may notice in the future, you're seeing more and more people attending events that are finding those events on your Facebook and social media pages. So that's really nice. The other thing is, it doesn't get much more budget friendly than this. I mean, these were entirely driven by social media, which we do not pay for. And so it can be done at an entire, it takes time. I mean, reaching out to all of your local groups, reaching out to other pages, it's not going to happen in a minute. I mean, if you have a long list, in some cases, we have a list of 20 groups and pages that we want to reach out to. And it takes time to do that. And you have to sit down and do it yourself. But it's free besides your time. So it's not going to cost you any money as far as that's concerned. And then, as I mentioned, if you want to boost a post, if you do want to pay for advertising, it starts as little as $5. So if you have $5, you can advertise for yourself on your social media pages, which is really fantastic. The other thing is it's easily accessible. Now, I'm not going to say that that means it's the case that everyone has a Facebook. It's not. With our cross-stitch program in particular, I mean, we did have calls from people who did not have Facebook accounts and still wanted to participate. So I'm not saying that that this means everyone can reach your content this way. And I would say that's the one weakness of this kind of programming, is if they don't have a Facebook, they may not feel they can participate in a meaningful way. So that's probably the only issue with that. But it is still, by most accounts, easily accessible. The vast majority of people have a Facebook page at the very least, or they have an Instagram, or they have both. And this, for us in particular, especially on the Instagram side of things, we're reaching groups of people we don't usually reach with our programming. So ordinarily, the demographics that we reach are sort of 50 plus. And so with Instagram, we are reaching younger audiences than we would normally be reaching with our standard programming, even in-person programming. So that was nice to see that we could reach some other people. And then the other thing I highlighted earlier is this can be done with or without webinar platforms. So if you're looking at the price tag of a Zoom webinar account or some of these other accounts, and it's just looking prohibitive for whatever reason, this is free. That said, it comes with its own fun set of issues and if you're open to a lot of technological mishaps and all sorts of fun stuff. But it is free for you to use. And so you can do live video streaming on Facebook. You can also do live video streaming on Instagram. So you have opportunities on both of those. And then I think we have a little page for questions. Bridget, I don't know if you want to jump in and say anything more. I'm staring at the chat.
No, I would. No, I would just advise it, the probably one of the best benefits of it is the free, for small museums, that's important. And, even though we're a big museum because we're the state, we do have a very small budget. So, that has played an important part in our decision making as far as what platforms we want to use. And both of these were really successful.
Yeah, we had a really good time with it. And I know we may have some time for questions or things a bit later. I see someone in the chat mentioned, do you prepare your graphics for Facebook with Canva? We're happy to talk about the different photo editing stuff we use and all those fun collage making tools and things like that if you're interested. Canva is one of those options though. I will put out that's one of the ones you can use. It's super easy and very user friendly.
Caitlin, yeah, why don't you talk about that for just a second? And if you might, unless you're going to reference an image in the slide deck, maybe you could stop the share so we can see you a little bit more
sure.
fully and hear you describe sort of some of that. And I'll add Allie to this list in case she wants to respond as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I can speak really briefly to some of the photo editing stuff you can use. Honestly, there's a ton of them. I can't even get into all of them, but if you're looking for ones that are free or not going to cost you anything, Canva is great. There's also Adobe Photoshop Express is also a good free photo editor that you can use. Adobe Photoshop Mix is also free. All of those, the beauty of all of those, which you will find if you try to do this kind of programming, Facebook and Instagram in particular, are super picky about the dimensions of things and about the pixels in things, which can get kind of annoying when you're trying to use it to promote content and people are sending you photographs and they're all different. All of those different editing tools will, they literally have like a button that's like Instagram. And you just click it and it turns it into an Instagram size so that you can put it on your Instagram. So there's a lot of options out there, but those are three of them that we've used in the past.
Yeah, I love Canva. And people forget too, there's actually, if you're a nonprofit, which I'm sure all you are, you can actually sign up to get it for free, like the pro version for free, which you need it. Because I tried to use the free version. I was like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah, the free version is rough.
Yeah. So if you're all in nonprofits, go and sign up. I think you just Google how to do that is what I did. And it's super easy. And I use Canva all the time.
Yeah. And if you're curious or if anyone would be helped by a list of some of these things, if you're looking for a link shortener because you're trying to figure out how to shorten links, if you're looking for how to list all your links in one place or struggling with things like that, we could probably provide a list. It's a collection of different things that work for that altogether.
And, speaking of which, Allie already put, for folks who haven't checked out the chat, Allie already put the sort of connections for Prezi, Genially, and Restream, which she mentioned. Somebody can add Canva pretty easily there. And so you can check out and scroll through the chat box if you've got questions about where to find more information about some of the platforms and tools that have been discussed. Other folks with questions, you can feel free to unmic and ask, or you can ask through the chat and I can sort of voice it for you. That's a little weird though.
Caitlin, and Bridget, I actually have a question for you guys. So when you did the photo contest, what did you use for people to be able to vote on the pictures?
So what we did, because we were really looking for engagement selfishly, but also because we wanted people to feel like they were entirely in control and we had nothing to do with who won. The way that we ran this from a voting standpoint is we took submissions. We kind of cut it off at 25, but we only got 23, got 23. And then we gave people a week to vote by reacting to their favorite photo. So we put together a photo album on Facebook, and then we allowed them to go through and like or love whichever photos they thought ought to win. If they wanted to like all the photos, great. You know, if they just wanted to choose 2 or 3 that they liked, great. And then we chose our winners from those that had the highest reactions. So the top 3 were our winners for that. And that, not only did that allow them to have total control over who won, we had someone comment, there's a lighthouse in all of these. Why'd you guys choose lighthouse? Like, I didn't.
We didn't.
We didn't. But it also, for us selfishly, Facebook engagement is very helpful when you're building your page. So we also got to like get 400 more likes than we ever get on anything.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Have
And for
you-
submissions and stuff, we did all of that through a Google Drive. So if you have a Google Drive, awesome. If you do not have a Google Drive, I highly recommend getting one. It's not the only way to do this. I mean, you can use Dropbox. There are other options, but it allows you to store everything in one place in a shareable folder and to create forms and things for people to fill out. We did have a form involved with this. They did have to give us permissions to use their photos and things like that. So that we did all through Google Drive. Again, totally free. You can pay for more storage space if you want, or you can struggle with the free storage space and hope you don't use all of it, which is what we're currently doing.
Are there other questions? Otherwise, I have a sort of brief follow-up. You mentioned the sort of expanded reach that some of these programs have been able to generate for you, either in terms of kids or in terms of sort of young adult demographics, because of using social media and various other accessible platforms and promotional strategies. Have you seen that last? Was this sort of a one-time thing, or was there a strategy for then developing other programs that would sort of bring folks back?
I don't know. I don't want to jump over. So that reach, as far as we can tell, and one of the downsides to social media, I'll say right now, is measuring stuff. It can be really, really hard to continue to measure. You can measure how many people like a thing or click on a thing, but it gets pretty tricky after that. You can look at who follows you, which is great, but it's kind of tough. I will say, we did not have sort of a situation where a bunch of people started following us and then they all dropped off. We've seen from this like a continued increase in engagement with the rest of our content. So for example, on our Instagram, you know, we started out very few followers, getting like 12 likes on a photo. We got a lot more followers with this photo contest and with the cross stitch, and now we're seeing, you know, 30, 40 likes a photo on average. So it sticks around. It's hard to measure. We have tried to continue offering things that have been successful this way. The cross stitch followed the photo contest when we realized people liked things like that. And we have continued to offer sort of similar stuff in that, like activities that you can engage with that we thought people would be interested in. But it is hard to measure. It's really hard to measure. Honestly, for us, the only way we measure it at all is by being able to look at our like Instagram insights. But even that's pretty like rough.
Superficial, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good to hear about, though. But that crowdsourced content generation, I know so many museums that have benefited from that strategy during the pandemic, in terms of not just running a sort of conversation program or even a one-time interactive program, but doing something where the content generation is really coming from members of the community that they're trying to reach. You know, there's been a fair number of success stories with that strategy, so that's something to consider. Other questions? Anyone? We've still got some time left.
Follow up. Oh, sorry, Ken.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Allie.
I can add a follow-up in terms of measuring programs, in terms of virtual programs on our site, because I see this get asked a lot in a bunch of different Facebook groups I'm in. So we actually measure our virtual programs in sort of 2 or 3 different ways. So for Zoom or live programs, we measure them by households. And so we kind of determine what a household is for us, but oftentimes with Zoom programs, like right now, you'll see some people have their camera off, someone might be listening in a different room. I found a lot of times when I worked with kids, there are other, kids that were out of the age group that I was, directing the program at that were like floating in and out and actually interacting, which was fine with me. So that's how we measure our live programs, is by household, to kind of give us some sort of quantitative data. And then for recorded programs, we just have to do by views. There's really no easy way, as I'm sure you guys, it's just, we got views. Someone could view it 20 times. One person could pop on for a second. Half of those could be my views, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can track the unique
Yeah.
email address uses. But Laura asked a question here in the chat. Can you speak to the time involved in learning new platforms and balancing creating new programs and content with, our everyday workloads, which are not insignificant? A very good question.
Funny she should ask that, because Caitlin and I have been discussing this right now. Right now, we have the luxury, if you will, of being able to have a little more time on our hands, because we are doing tours by appointment only, and they're limited, and we do have staff working remotely. And so it's been easier for them to do a lot of this digital programming and learning platforms. And we've discussed basically how many hours or weeks it has taken to do a video. I mean, Allie, you know that if you're editing them. Caitlin, do you want to speak to that a little bit about, you're the one that's learned all these platforms?
Allie, I don't know if you want to speak to video editing. I'll say roughly, I'll leave it to Allie to get into any specifics. I'll say roughly for us, we chose today to talk about our social media programs, which are the most hands-free of all the programs we do. But when it gets into some of the other stuff we've done, creating interactive activities, making puzzles that kids can do at home without a printer, learning how to edit videos, learning how to edit photos, learning how to put all that stuff together and record audio and all the rest of it. I don't even really want to think about how much it is. But I don't know, Allie, if you want to talk about.
I would say after I created, I think 4 or 5 virtual recorded programs when I was working at home. Now I'm in the office full time. But I would say it probably takes me to edit fully like a 30-minute video a whole day, which just seems crazy. You're like, what are you doing? But it does, because you're modifying the audio. I'm adding in pictures. I have to listen through things multiple times. And it doesn't seem like it would take a whole day, but it does.
Yeah, even just
myself in the foot the other day, because I had a virtual program that I recorded 2 days prior to it. It just was how schedules worked out. I had to edit down an hour and 30 minutes of content into 30 minutes, which took me like 2 whole days of just, that was all I did. So it is a time commitment. It sucks to put it frankly. But I mean, you got the content, then you have that content for a long time. So for me, the payoff has been great in terms of just, yes, it is a lot of work, but I've reused a lot of content that I've created in the past, and it's kind of there forever.
Yeah, I would say, for us, it's been very similar. The amount of work, it's a lot. I mean, even just, I'm imagining for a moment how long it takes us to caption a video so that anyone who has issues with audio can understand the video. I mean, even just that does take time. I will say one of the huge benefits I definitely recommend is, if you're about to jump into any of this stuff, if you're looking at a platform and trying to figure out how to use it, YouTube is your best friend. Everyone has made a how-to video on these things on YouTube. I have gone into YouTube, just type how to use OpenShot Video Editor, or how to create captions in Notepad or whatever. And somebody has made a video for me to watch, which is fantastic. So I will say, as far as having a place to learn, it's all out there. It's actually really accessible. It's just exactly as Laura mentions here, balancing having the time to sit down and watch those YouTube videos and learn that stuff with all the other stuff that we all have going on.
Thank you for saying that, Caitlin. I was about to say that too. One of the areas of my experience is in sort of digital history and digital content creation. And so I teach courses at Delaware about it. And you get a bunch of students who have been studying history for 6 or 7 years into a classroom, and you're like, okay, now we're gonna build this thing online, and like all the faces glaze over, right? Because they're like, oh no, I can't do that. But really, it is a series of YouTube videos and websites that take you step by step through the process. You do need some time, but the curve is not as steep as it seems.
Yeah, I would say, yes, the video editing takes time and stuff. I probably at the beginning of all of this, sometime in April when we were closed, took maybe a full day just to learn how to edit video. And it did take a full day. But after that, then it's just finding the time to actually do the editing.
Other questions? We've got a few minutes left for maybe one more before we close up. I do want to know. Oh, go ahead. Somebody about to say something?
Oh.
Well, I'll add something. So tell me about, you said it's hard to count your audiences, but I remember you guys saying something to me about you were really surprised that where some of your audience was located. That you're picking up people that you would never have expected to pick up. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, Casey, I can tell you from our experience with the Zoom platform, the registrations will tell you, what state or domicile people are from. So that kind of gave us a indication that we were, we weren't just reaching local people. We were reaching people maybe from like Texas or Colorado, or I don't know. Did we have somebody from Alaska once? I think, I don't know. We had, yeah. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, our very first attempt at a virtual program, we had someone from Alaska. So I will say that's voluntary. They don't have to give that information. When you set up your Zoom registration, you can ask that be a part of the registration to try to get some of that information. It's still, as Ali pointed out, with the counting households, you don't know how many people are on that computer. Unfortunately, there's no way to know without asking them how many people are on that computer. So we kind of do a rough estimate as well, or use views on Facebook videos, or you can check engagement. You have to keep in mind with all of this stuff, a view on Facebook is 3 seconds. If someone watched your video for 3 seconds, they're a view. That doesn't mean they sat and enjoyed your whole presentation. Unfortunately, getting to the like nitty gritty of that is really hard.
Yeah, and we sending out surveys.
Go ahead, Allie, and then I'll.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love to send out surveys. I love to collect data and look at all of it. So after every single virtual program, even to the schools, I always send out a survey. And again, that's also voluntary, but it allows us to have some feedback. And yeah, it's a great place to also collect that information. So.
And you can attach those to your Zoom presentations. So if you are using Zoom, if you do have Zoom, there is a survey component, and we've done that on all of our programming for the most part, where at the end, they will be kicked to a survey at the end of the Zoom presentation. Sometimes that means they'll more likely to answer it. I don't know that it promises anything, but it can be helpful. So you can create surveys, and we've created all of ours again on a Google Drive. And then the Google Drive logs all the responses, and we can go in and see, what's working people, not working for people, were there more people, that sort of thing.
We do have one last question from Barbara Pratt, which we should address because we just spent a lot of time talking about how you can find resources to edit video. So Barbara has asked what programs, so that she knows specifically what to search for, have you used to edit the video?
I can speak really quickly. 2 programs for us that are free and one that is not. So originally we did all of our editing. If you have someone on your team with an Apple computer, there's something called iMovie. It's not the most beautiful thing that ever existed, but it will create decent video if you really sit down and work at it. You can make decent videos on iMovie. So if somebody has an Apple computer, great, you already have iMovie. If you don't have iMovie, like me, if you're a Windows user, I use a program, kind of 2 programs together. One's called OpenShot Video Editor, which is a free video editing program. Again, it's not the most graceful video editing program, but it does work. And sort of more importantly, it's very user-friendly. It's for beginners, clearly for beginners. So I use that in combination with a photo sort of content creator called Inkscape, which creates still images that you can stick into videos. So those, and then the other one that is not free is if you want to use Photoshop, essentially. So you can use Adobe, and that creates really beautiful stuff, but it is not free. So you would have to purchase it if you wanted to use that.
Yeah, those are great. I found some new free ones, which I love to share with people. I have used Lightworks. It did crash. I had an older computer. It did kind of crash it. So thing with video editing is it's going to use a lot of memory. So you might want to also
get an external hard drive.
External hard drive. And
Yes.
we use Adobe Premiere because luckily we do actually have Adobe here. Can't recommend it enough. And I learned little things each time. So if you can't afford that for your site, put it on an Amazon wish list. Or, there's probably a donor or a member who would love to contribute something that would make a huge difference. So think about that.
And
you can't afford something like that.
And again, if you're working for nonprofits, if you've got an educational mission, right, you qualify for the Adobe discount on the suite. So it's still going to cost money, and it's still not super cheap, but it is cheaper than the average person would get for.
And it's the best. I mean, if you can get that, then get that, because you'll save yourself a lot of heartache.
Yes.
Of course, another alternative, it's unsupported now, but a cheaper alternative too. And I did this until I just came to the University of Delaware in August, and they got me an Adobe subscription. But for a long time, I went out and got an old CD-ROM version, like an earlier version of Photoshop, and just loaded it up on my computer and used it in-house. Now, for those of you who don't know, all of the Adobe stuff lives in the ether. It's on the cloud, so to speak. And you buy a subscription and log in order to use those tools. But you can find the older versions, which are still very useful, floating around out there. And then you just throw it onto your computer like any other piece of software. So, well, thank you all so much for taking the time. I know we're a few minutes over. Just as a reminder that the video, that this has been recorded and the video will be available on the DMA website. I want to thank Caitlin and Bridget and Allie for sharing their experience and their expertise. And I want to thank Casey and Dan for setting up this whole event. I'm glad to meet all of you, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. Casey, the next installation of this series is
on March 2nd from 12 to 1, and it is specifically on promotional strategies for your new online programs. And we got a little bit into that today. So it'll be developing, your expertise on that a little further. So we hope you see you then. Also, one of the things that we've been thinking about was putting together a Zoom brainstorming session where people just talked about their program ideas and got some feedback. Because especially if you're sitting by yourself, wondering whether you're losing your marbles, or whether this really is a good idea. If you're interested in doing this, we would love to know. In fact, you can vote now if you want. But what we were thinking,
should have done a poll.
Yeah, let's have a poll. Yeah. And what we thought we would do is just run it as a lunchtime brainstorming session. So maybe what we'll do is go ahead and throw that out there for after the next session on March 2nd. So we'll just throw it out there and see who wants to come in, because what I'm learning from this is I'm the number of responses that we're getting and the variety of people who are participating is a wonderful thing to see, and we'd love to have more contact with you. So thank you very much, everybody, for participating today, and I learned a tremendous amount. I want you to know I'm currently struggling to learn how to work with Canva, and it's sort of like, us old timers, we're slow, but we'll stick with it, right? So we'll stick with it. So thank you very much, everybody. Wear your masks. Please be safe, and we will see you via Zoom on March 2nd. Thanks a lot.
So long, everyone. Bye-bye.